What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review Bill and Ted Face the Music, which is available today on video on demand. It was actually written by the original writers of the first two movies, Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon. And in the director's chair, we have Dean Parasot, who's probably best known for directing the movie Galaxy Quest back in 1999. But I have to admit, prior to seeing Bill and Ted Face the Music, I was excited and I was curious, but I was also pretty skeptical because I don't think any of us knew with any certainty that a 30-year-old comedy franchise was somehow going to be able to make a comeback. But I have to admit that having now seen the glorious ending of this movie, while it's an imperfect movie, overall I found the movie to be most triumphant, as they would say. I'll even admit that the movie gave me chills on several occasions, and then by the end of the film, I was laughing, and then my face was just nothing but smiles. But before I get too carried away, I have to emphasize the fact that this movie has plenty of dead air, and on the whole, I would argue that it lacks the comedy of the first movie. In particular, great lines like when they're back in the Wild West and they're like, dude, we're totally weak. We can't possibly fight you. But what it lacks in comedy, it more than makes up for with an abundance of heart. This could end up being the most positive film that we'll see all year. What we have here is 92 minutes of light entertainment, and I honestly thought that was a lost art from at this point. But Bill S. Preston Esquire and Ted Theodore Logan, they're back to make the world a better place. And as soon as I'm done posting this review, I'm probably going to go right back and revisit some of my favorite scenes from Bill and Ted Face the Music. Now, I don't know if everybody's going to react the same way because I was part of the initial target audience for the first film, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, back in 1989. I was 13 years old. It's still by far my favorite of the three. But prior to seeing Face the Music, I went back and revisited both of the original movies. And I really had no idea what to expect because it had been decades since I'd seen either of the movies. And I was actually caught off guard by how much I was laughing during that first movie. Just lines like, "Welcome to the Hall of Presidents," or "Bill, strange things are afoot at the Circle K." I was just blown away by how well the comedy and their chemistry held up because in the end, Bill and Ted, they're basically the same guy. They have the same thoughts. They can finish each other's sentences. They can finish each other's sentences even when they're encountering different versions of themselves from different periods. But what surprised me the most about revisiting the first movie was just how much emotion I felt during that really brief sequence where they visit the future and they get a taste of the world that they've created. And there's this killer song playing in the background, and that's when they come up with their lines, be excellent to each other and party on, dudes. And while I don't like Bogus Journey as much as a lot of other people do, I know for a lot of people they prefer Bogus Journey over Excellent Adventure, but there's no denying that their relationship with the Grim Reaper just makes that movie. I think Bogus Journey has kind of a weak beginning and a weak ending, but the way that they both defeat and then befriend the Grim Reaper was fantastic stuff, and bringing back William Sadler as Death and Face the Music was an excellent call on their parts. And it's incredible to me that Ed Solomon and Chris Matheson, the writers of all three of these movies, how they've been able to maintain this consistent tone through all three. After several decades, they were able to dive into this latest movie without missing a beat, with the exact same positive energy, because if you're going to say anything about these three movies, they're incredibly positive. Also, quick side note, I didn't know this until a couple days ago, but Chris Matheson is actually the son of author Richard Matheson. Richard Matheson wrote one of the scariest novels in human history, Hell House, along with a bunch of other classics like I Am Legend. But with Face the Music, they hit the ground running with their story, and there's only a little bit of teeny tiny mild retconning of the story details from the post-credit sequence from Bogus Journey, because if you remember in Bogus Journey, after they have their big concert, we see all these newspaper headlines about them doing things like curing cancer and fixing the ozone layer and all kinds of things. What this movie hangs on to is that Bill and Ted had a massive single, they hit the road with the Grim Reaper, and they were really popular for a brief shining moment, but now they've fallen back on hard times. They're still cranking out music. They still think they're going to create a song that's going to change the world. But they're back in a place where both Ted's dad, who's still alive and in this movie, and the rest of the world is kind of looking down upon them. And time and reality are starting to come unraveled. People and items are disappearing from different points in history, and we're rapidly facing a situation where reality as we know it is just going to completely disintegrate. The only two people alive who still believe in Bill and Ted are actually B and T, their daughters. And going into this movie, I thought B and T were the big X factor where they could either make or break the movie, and I'm relieved to report they're actually the strongest part of the movie. They're bodacious even, but they're played by Samara Weaving and Bridget Lundy Payne, and they have that same effortless charm and same effortless humor that Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves established with the first movie. And the way their characters speak, the way their characters move, they're totally their father's daughters. And I was actually getting little bits of chills just seeing how well it was working. Because the characters aren't in competition with their fathers. They're not trying to outshine their fathers. They're their father's biggest fans. They adore their dads, and they're in their corner every step of the way. And the fact that they as a quartet are so close, that's what gives the movie so much heart. So as fun as it was seeing a lot of the familiar faces from the first two movies, like Bill's stepmom slash eventually Ted's stepmom, who's now Ted's stepbrother, I believe. In any event, Missy's marrying Ted's brother at the beginning of the movie. But I have to admit that Samara Weaving and Bridget Lundy Payne, they kind of stole the show whenever they're on the screen. But the big drama for Bill and Ted is the realization that in the next couple of years, they're not only going to lose their wives, but their daughters are going to no longer be talking to them. And so their silver bullet for saving all reality, they decide finally they're just going to steal the phone booth from the future that's now part of an exhibit dedicated to Rufus, and they're just going to travel into the future and ask their future selves, what song did they write that saves everything? And so this movie has a massive ticking clock scenario where they've got about 77 minutes to save all reality. And like in the first movie, they kind of play fast and loose with the rules of time travel. However, it is consistent with the first movie with this idea that no matter how much you travel around, the clock is ticking on the inevitable moment where they are going to have to perform this song. So while they're off in the future having all kinds of adventures with different versions of themselves, their daughters, B and T, get in on the action by traveling throughout history. And they start collecting all the greatest musicians in order to create the best band possible. So they grab Jimi Hendrix from the 60s, and they grab Louis Armstrong from the 20s. They grab Mozart from the 1780s. And quick side note, seeing Jimi Hendrix and Mozart jamming together, going back and forth, that was an outrageously cool moment that every music lover is going to absolutely adore. But as fun as it might be seeing Mozart and Jimi having a jam session, this movie also has a lot of scenes that really drag or are just painfully unfunny. Some of the scenes with the loser versions of Bill and Ted in the future are about as funny as an orphanage on fire. That said, the prison scene that was teased in the trailer, that was actually pretty goddamn good, where they've packed on all kinds of muscle and they've developed a much more metal attitude about the kind of music they're trying to create. But I haven't even mentioned yet another great addition to the cast where you have this assassin killer robot dude from the future named Dennis, who looks insanely cool and he keeps killing everybody with lasers and sending them to hell. But much like the Grim Reaper in Bogus Journey, Dennis ends up becoming a part of their crew and becomes an amazing recurring source of comedy throughout, especially as he and Death start to form a little bit of a clique toward the end of the movie. And Dennis might not have a lot of skills when it comes to creating music, but he loves to dance. But actor Anthony Carrigan, who plays Dennis, he's fantastic. But as weak as I might have found the middle section of the movie to be, the last 30 minutes or so really picks up speed, and the movie just completely, totally comes together. I might have preferred the depiction of hell in Bogus Journey. However, in hell, everybody's reunited. And the catalyst that really gets that last act up and running is when they have their reunion with Death. And then what's great about the character Death is how he's so cocky and he's so arrogant, but he's also so insecure. And he gets so easily wounded emotionally. And he's upset because Bill and Ted issued a restraining order after Death tried to steal the band's name back in the day. But as it turns out, Death's really good at playing bass. B and T are massive fans. And they engineer a reunion that brings everybody back together. And from that point on, like I said, just nothing but smiles. So the ending's absolutely bananas, where both people and items are teleporting all throughout history. It's just complete and total chaos, but as it turns out, Bill and Ted don't need to write the song that's going to save all reality. What they need to do is they need to get every single person throughout all of history to play the same song at the same time. So you have this great bit where B and T are getting this incredible band to get on the same page and playing all this incredible music together, while Bill and Ted find a way to create infinite versions of themselves to travel to every point in history handing out instruments. And I'm actually getting little bits of goosebumps even thinking about it and talking about it, but suddenly throughout all of history, you've got everybody jamming together. You've got Jesus playing the cowbell at the Last Supper, and you've got George Washington rocking out as he crosses the Delaware, and you've even got Dennis dancing by himself back in the future. There's this moment at the end when they're all rocking out together and they're all jamming, and Bill and Ted are just sounding incredible, and they look over at Jimi Hendrix and they just share a look, and I just started cracking up and laughing with pure joy, and I can't remember the last time a movie just made me feel so good during the finale. And the emotions that I felt at that moment were precisely the same emotions that I felt going back to the original Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure when they travel into the future and they see this impact that they're going to have on society, and everybody's just doing those guitar motions together. It's just a magical scene from that movie, and it's just incredible that here we are in 2020 and they were able to literally get the band back together and create those emotions all over again. And in terms of positive messages from a movie, the idea of getting every single person from every single chapter of history just to have a jam session playing the same song, it's just a very sweet, innocent movie. Would I have liked more laughs? Yes. Would I have liked fewer scenes that are just dead on arrival? Yes. But it's incredible that Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves, they still got it. Keanu Reeves at this point, he has enough money to buy his own island and live like a Roman emperor for the rest of his life. And I just find it incredibly endearing that he's still attracted to this kind of material, this character. And if Bill and Ted and B&T want to get together for one last hoorah for a fourth movie, I'll watch it. Why not? In any event, I think that's all I got to say about this particular movie. So I hope everyone has a most excellent, most triumphant weekend. Hope everybody enjoys Bill and Ted Face the Music. If you enjoyed this review, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, hitting that notification bell. And if you want to talk more, you can find me on Twitter @Colbrex. But thanks again for watching. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.